What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and finally today is a day where I can bring you an updated Majespecter profile involving the return of KIRIN. That's right, so on the most recent banlist, which goes in effect as of tomorrow for America and then a week later for the European areas, we get KIRIN back to 1. So what can it actually do in the deck? Well, annoyingly, KIRIN is a level 6, so in natural Majespecters, their scales only go from a 2 to a 5. However, we've got brand new cards in the form of Rui and, of course, in the form of Majespecter Winds, which makes getting to KIRIN a lot easier. The only issue is, when KIRIN hits the extra deck, how are you supposed to get it back out? Well, that's where I've added in the Superheavy Samurai engine as previous, just because it shows you how much easier it is to get a scale of 8 to 1, and then you're completely open to do whatever you want. Now, there are some other additional spicy text within this deck, and I'll talk you through the different options that you have with the deck, how you can change it up in order to get the most from it. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. I'll also show you a very basic combo at the end of the video that gets you direct access to KIRIN, as well as ending your board on a pretty strong outcome. So, with all of that out of the way, let's dive headfirst into the profile and show you exactly what we've got. Now, obviously, the Majespecter lineup is going to be relatively straightforward. I can't imagine any scenario where you'd want to play it any differently from what I'm about to show you. So you start off with, of course, triple Majespecter Banbuku. So this, alongside your Yata, is your main starter for the Majespecter side. Keep in mind that Yata gets you direct access into Banbuku, in a sense, because it will get you to wins. And then off of the back of that, your Banbuku can get you to a Yamarashi, which is, of course, your one-card combo to get you into Nui. And then, of course, it can also, Banbuku, get you into a Majespecter KIRIN. Very, very nice and synergized. Then, of course, we do play triple Yamarashi. This card is just absolutely insane. The only downside is it doesn't let you reset your traps from the graveyard, which would have been incredibly beautiful if it did. But the fact that it lets you recycle your spells gives you more access to wins, meaning that you can get more consistent access to KIRIN should you need it. And then for the one-ups, of course, we've got the one Kibi, the one Ugama, and the return of the Mac, the one Majespecter Unicorn KIRIN. For those of you that don't know what this does, it has the exact same built-in protection. It cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Very nice. But then on top of that, during your player's turn, you can target a pendulum monster in your monster zone and one monster your opponent controls. Return them to the hands. Now, obviously, in the ideal scenario, what you'll always want to be doing is using to bounce back the KIRIN. However, with the Superheavy Samurai version, what it allows you to do is it means you can bounce back your starters. And obviously, when you're bouncing KIRIN back to the hand, if they clear off your pendulum scales, you're not going to be able to summon it back down. You're always going to be in a tricky scenario. However, if you're leaving KIRIN on the board, considering it's 2k, it's probably one of the stronger, if not the stronger Majespecter monsters from the main deck, it allows you to bounce back some of your starters in the form of Yata or Banbuku, so you can start your combo all off again the next turn. So yes, of course, being able to bounce this back to the hand means that your wind is always going to be active. However, letting it go into the extra deck with this version and using the Superheavy Samurai engine does mean that you have the additional benefit of being able to recycle your starters should you want to. For the other Majespecter we play is the triple Majesty Pegasus the Draco Slayer, always treated as a Majespecter card. Now, ironically, this will actually allow you to play another one of the cards that's come back from the ban list, and that is, of course, Chicken Game. It would be really, really funny to utilize Chicken Game, but it is quite an annoying card to deal with because you need to make sure that you're never the one up on life points, or you're always going to replace it, and you're basically just paying 1,000 life points to draw a card, get rid of it before you give that option to your opponent. Then for the other Draco Slayers, we are playing the one Dynamite Power Load and the one Luster. Now, if you like, I really don't want to play the Superheavy Samurai engine, but I still want my scales to be able to incorporate KIRIN. The other one you can play is the Ignis Heat, because that becomes a level 7 scale, and that's when you're going to be able to adapt your scales. So that's how the other way you can get the KIRIN active, but the benefit of having a 1 to 8 scale also means you can utilize cards in the form of stuff like Kashtira Fenrir as well. For the rest of the Majespecter cards we are playing is triple Majespecter Wind. They must have known KIRIN was coming back when they printed this card because it allows you to special summon a level 6 or lower Majespecter from the deck, hand, or graveyard, which is really, really nice. Technically, it lets you special summon any Majespecter monster from the deck, but obviously, you're not going to go higher than a level 6. It just allows you to bring back the Rui and the Nui from the graveyard. The one Cyclone, and then the other one is a Majespecter card, but isn't a Majespecter card by name, is Majesty Pegasus. Now, the issue with this one is this was the field spell that we had previously, before we got all this new support, and it only let you special summon a level 4 or lower. It let you tribute off any Majespecter monster, or technically Wind Spellcaster, but it only let you summon out a level 4 or lower. So again, it still made it harder for you to get your main boss monster in the form of KIRIN. Obviously, KIRIN was incredibly busted, which is why it was banned. But when you're trying to play it in a pure Majespecter deck, you're just trying to find more ways of doing it, and it's a lot more tricky than what it used to be. The other field spell, just to the side of each other, is Necro Valley. Now I choose to main deck Necro Valley over Secret Village of the Spellcasters because I feel that Necro Valley can be more damaging going first or second than a Secret Village. At the end of the day, if you're up against a matchup that can spawn out Spellcasters, it's completely dead. Whereas 99% of the cards in this game right now are moving stuff from the graveyard. When you look at stuff like Thunder Dragons, they're going to want to move stuff from the graveyard. Bestials want to move stuff from the graveyard, as well as then looking at stuff like Snake Eyes and everything else. So I feel that Necro Valley is more damaging to your opponent. Yes, it can cause you a little bit of an issue when you're trying to use the Winds Revive from the graveyard, but the best thing about Winds is it allows you to use your hand and sometimes the main deck as well, so you don't really need to worry about Necro Valley massively, especially when you're just looping KIRIN around anyway and constantly dealing with any threats your opponent might have. For the trap cards, we've got the 1 Tempest and the 1 Tornado. The only issue with these cards is that they can't be recycled. However, with the Superheavy Samurai engine, or just generally the Majespecters itself, it can be a lot more aggressive than it was back in the day, which means that once you have gone first and you're setting these cards up, once you use them, you shouldn't need to use them again. You should have enough on the board to complete an OTK. Moving into the Superheavy Samurai engine, of course, we are playing triple Wakashi. This card is just absolutely nuts for the deck. The fact that it sets you up your scales on its own can be incredibly important because that gives you a 1 and an 8, and there's very few cards left in the game that allow you to set up your pendulum scales through one card, and Wakashi is one of them. We are, of course, playing the 1 Big Benkei. Now, this is a bit risky because if you do hard open this, then your entire Wakashi engine does slightly die, but you can still scale this, scale that, and you're good to rock and roll, going back to the good old-fashioned version. Unfortunately, it's the risk and reward. If you want to play a second Big Benkei, you can. The other card that I am playing is 2 Motorbike. You can play Motorbike at 3 if you want to increase the consistency of the Wakashi, but the way I saw it was, at the end of the day, because we're not going into the Axel Synchro to try and move into a Baron as much, Synchro level 10s are less relevant. When you're using this engine, you're basically setting up your scales, and then it's entirely up to you whether you choose not to set up your scales and go for a rank 4, which in case you would then use the Gaia booster, but I'm not using this. I'm specifically using Wakashi to go into a Synchro level 6, and then that will allow me to move my plays further forward. So how do you make the level 6? Well, we do play the 1 Soul Claw. Now, obviously, the idea is off the back of the Wakashi combo, which I'll show you at the end of the video. You'll do the exact same thing as you usually would do, but you equip the Soul Claw, unequipped it, Synchro into a level 6. That will then allow you to put your Wakashi into the scales. You've got an 8 to a 1. You haven't used your normal summon. You've got a level 6 on the board. If you wanted to, you could quite ironically play a Beatrice, because you would, in this entire combo route, get the ability to search out a KIRIN and then pendulum summon down the KIRIN. So there's an option for you if you want to. If you're not going to be doing that and you don't want to go into a Synchro play or anything else, you still have the ability to go into one of your Link 2s in Beyond the Pendulum, search out KIRIN that way and go hardcore. And then, of course, moving on to the hand traps, we are playing triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring alongside triple Kashtira Fenrir. These are completely adaptable to your local environment. Now, what I mean by that is if Fenrir is not going to be as effective for you, you can use Super Poly. But the way I kind of looked at it when I was putting this together is we're probably going to be, especially in the early forms of this new format, dealing with Thunder Dragon Colossus quite a lot. So that's where Kashtira Fenrir can come into play alongside Infinite Impermanence, because these can deal with Colossus without even needing to worry too much. Special summon down Fenrir, attack, banish Colossus face down, boom, we don't need to worry about its protection effect. Imperm Colossus, boom, don't need to worry about it. And they still have utilities in other matchups as well, being able to turn off certain board breakers, being able to turn off certain forms of interruption. You're basically trading 1-for-1s. Now, you can look at stuff like True Tactics Talents, but then it relies on your opponent to activate a monster effect, and if they're not doing that, you're not going to get any advantage. You could look at Super Poly to help break a board, but then if they're not putting another monster on the board that can then be used as the fodder for your Thunder Dragon Colossus, you're not going to go anywhere. So you do need to keep all of that in mind, which is why I decided to go with the more balanced option of Imperm and Fenrir, but you can completely shuffle up these 6 cards if you want to. It is a 42 card deck. You could consider something like Pot of Prosperity, but the issue with that is straight away it turns off the Superheavy Samurai engine. So if you're going to be doing something along those lines, that's probably when you're going to be playing a more pure Majespecter focused build, because unfortunately the Superheavy Samurai engine does take up 7 slots, but the way I see it is those 7 slots give me a confirmed scale of an 8 to a 1, as well as the ability of going into a Synchro level 6 to replace the 1 card combo I've just done, or gives me the ability to move into rank 6 plays, link 2 plays, anything I need to. Moving on to the extra deck, we'll start off with the XYZs. So we'll start off with 2 Majespecter Rui. This card's absolutely nuts. It's another way of being able to get you direct access to your Majespecter KIRIN. So it gives you the ability to tribute, or when a Wind Spellcaster is tributed through their own effects, which is really nice for your spells and traps is what I mean. You're able to special summon a Wind Spellcaster monster from the deck, so that's going to give you direct access to KIRIN. The other card that we play that you don't have to play if you don't want to is one of the very easy flex spots, is the Majespecter Paladin, the Ascending Draco Slayer. Just gives you a search in the end phase for follow-up. And then, of course, we've got the one Dino Mist Power, and then, of course, Ignistor. If you want to make this more consistently, of course, that's where the Soul Gaia comes into play. But again, it just gives you a level 8 Synchro going second, more so than going first. You could consider stuff like Omega if you wanted to rip one from your opponent's hand, but unfortunately, without access to stuff like Borrowed Savage anymore, or of course Baron, we don't have as much of a resource to provide us with an out-and-out protection, which is the one big thing you need to be very careful with the Majespecter deck, is that it can do a lot by holding back some of its resource, but if you get too greedy, especially in this upcoming format, I feel that Nib is going to run riot. Because without the access to stuff like Barons that was morely used to deal with Nibiru's and stuff like Savage Dragons in times to come, Nibiru is just going to be out and out that entire board breaker. So it looks interesting for going second. It definitely looks like Konami are favouring the Tenpai strategy a little bit more, but that is something you need to kind of adapt with and play around with yourself. And then for the Link 2s, of course, we've got the 2 Nui. Now, the reason I've gone with 2 Nui and the 1 Beyond is for the pure fact that Nui specifically requires 2 Pendulum monsters, whereas Beyond requires 1 Pendulum monster and an effect monster, so it can easily be made with Wakashi. The only issue is when you make it with Wakashi, it won't go into your scale because it needs to be used as synchro material in order to go into your scales. But that's, of course, where you would use Beyond the Pendulum to search out a second Wakashi if you need it, scale it up, and then summon down, and you'd get the Wakashi from the extra deck and be able to move out further. It gives you an alternative option to the Nui, because obviously the Nui will lock you into Majespecters for the rest of the turn, whereas the Beyond the Pendulum doesn't do that. Then for the other generic Link 2s, we've got the 1 IP Masquerena, the 1 SP Little Knight. For the Link 3, we've got Exceed the Pendulum. Now, the reason I went with this rather than Selene is because obviously Selene brings back from the graveyard, so sometimes if you're under Necro Valley, this will be a little bit more effective for you. That being said, more times than not, when you're going off of the Exceed the Pendulum, you're going to be going into an access code, which utilises the graveyard anyway. So if you're already under your own Necro Valley, you're not going to want to be making this. You're probably going to want to make an Appaloosa for going first, and that is your only real protection from the Biru. Keep in mind that when you do make that, more times than not, you probably would have already been past the 5 summons, and that's where you need to be a little bit careful, and that's why Majespecter wins is going to be even more important for you. Because even if they do Nibiru you, as long as you can get a Wind spellcaster on the board, Winds can then do that job for you, or if you hold a Wind spellcaster back in the hand, or one gets to the graveyard, you can still use Winds to bring it back, and you still have the ability of your spells and traps to be online, so it's very, very important to keep that in mind. So that's it for the main core extra deck. The remaining 2 slots, yes, I know I've only shown you 13, is entirely down to personal preference. So the option that I like to go for, because I do feel that it has a little bit more spice capabilities, is you go into the Stardust Charge Warrior, which is obviously your Wakashi, into Charge Warrior, draw, you replace the combo you've just made or the 1 card you've used in order to get that. You've got your scales 8 to 1. On top of that as well, when you do Pendulum Summon, if you Pendulum Summon a level 4 monster, which is quite easily done in this deck, as an aggressive option, you have access to the Nirvana High Paladin. So what this does is for this card's Synchro Summon, you can treat a Pendulum Summoned Pendulum monster you control as a tuner. If this card is Synchro Summoned using a Pendulum Summoned Pendulum monster tuner, you can target 1 card in your graveyard and add it to the hand. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can halve your opponent's life points. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed by battle or card effect, you place it into your scale as a level 8, which is exactly what you need. So the idea is Charge Warrior will replace what you need, and then it gives you the ability when you Pendulum Summon to go into a Nirvana High Paladin, which gives you just an out-and-out aggressive option. As an alternative to Charge Warrior, you could go into your Coral Dragon, however you won't then be able to go into your Nirvana High Paladin. You can also consider something like the Metaphys Horus, however the only thing the Metaphys Horus will get is it only gives you the effects based on the non-tuners you use. So the main tuner of the deck will be Wakashi, meaning that the only effect you'll get is to target one other face-up card on the field and negate its effects, which is really, really nice. However, if you do find a way of using a Pendulum Tuner and then a non-tuner Pendulum monster, get there eventually, and a tuner effect monster, it will actually give you the ability, your opponent chooses 1 monster they control and gives you control of it, and then that's where you have a Horus monster, 1 monster your opponent controls, as long as it has a level, you can then go into the Dampier Vampire Sheridan and then target send one of your opponent's cards to the graveyard, or monsters to the graveyard, and then you also get the ability to detach and revive it. So it lets you go a little bit more. It's definitely a spicy option, but it's just kind of different things you can consider. Now, ultimately, if you don't want to be building your scales, your Wakashi plus the Soul Gaia or, of course, the Soul Claw can lead you into your Beyond the Pendulum. On top of that as well, the Soul Guy can also lead you into the Rui. The only issue is, again, what you're doing there is you're not getting the level 8 scale, and that's what we're trying to do with the Wakashi, is you're trying to build up your scales of 8 to 1 while also still maintaining a normal summon or giving you the ability to push further forward in order to get into everything you need. So you'll see that in the combo that I'll show you in a second, just so you can kind of see what the Wakashi will add to the deck, the draw you'll get off the Charge Warrior, the amount of cards you'll have in the hand at the end of the play, and then how you can extend your plays even further forward in order to build you the most consistent board as possible while giving you direct access to the KIRIN. Now, obviously, if you are worried about Nibiru, you will hold back some of your resources. You won't go all out. You will be a little bit cautious, and that's just something you need to remember. So what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom this out, and then I'm going to show you the combo and how you utilize the Wakashi with access through Banbuku or Yata. So the one card combo route technically for each of these is obviously Yata or Banbuku for your Majespecters, and then Wakashi for your Scales and Superheavy Samurai play. Just to show you the maximum amount of advantage you can get from this entire combo, we're actually going to start off with Yata and we'll start off with Wakashi. Of course, you can start off with Banbuku in Yata's place, but you just won't get as much advantage, and I'll show you exactly what you can do with just these two cards here. I'm just going to use 3 random cards to symbolize the rest of our hand, so you do have a lot of consistency to get you to this point here. You're going to start off with your Wakashi going into the Scales, using its effect to summon itself out, and then put the Big Benkei into your other Pendulum Zone. You'll then be able to use the Big Benkei's effect. This will give you your Soul Claw. You'll equip the Soul Claw to the Wakashi, summon it out, and then synchro these two together. Now, obviously, your Soul Claw will go to the graveyard, whereas your Wakashi will go to your other scale, completing your scales of an 8 to 1 and summoning you out a Charge Warrior. Charge Warrior's effect will trigger to allow you to draw 1 additional card, so now you're completely set back to your hand of 5, and you've got your scales of 8 to 1, so you can pretty much pendulum summon whatever you want. Now, of course, this can very easily be Coral Dragon if you want the draw later on, and you specifically want the Coral Dragon to make a Synchro level 10, which can be quite useful if you want to try and work your way into a Bestial Disbatter, but keep in mind that it requires a non-tuner dragon, which is where it really does become a bit of an issue, and you're not really banishing a lot of cards either, so it does become very specific and reliant on your opponent. So now what we're going to do here is you're going to normal summon down the Yata. Now, of course, if you did normal summon down the Banbuku, you'd be able to do pretty much the exact same thing, but we're just going to show you the Yata so you can see how much advantage you can gain off the back of this. Yata will then give you access to the winds. You'll activate the winds, tributing off the Yata, going into your extra deck, and this will then allow you to special summon 1 from the deck. And this is where you're going to want to summon out the Banbuku. Now, of course, you can just summon out KIRIN if you want to, make a rank 6, Beatrice, send a card, send transaction rollback during your opponent's turn, banish transaction rollback, lock your opponent out, very good, very fun. But on this one, obviously, your Banbuku can now search you out your KIRIN if you've already opened up your Yamarashi. If you haven't opened up your Yamarashi, then of course, I would say go for that, because you'll be able to search out your KIRIN later on in plays anyway, don't worry. So you've got Yamarashi, as long as you control Majespecter, you can special summon it. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. Because we control the Banbuku, we're going to special summon this. We're going to get the ability to reset winds, which is quite important, because if your opponent stops your access to KIRIN, you can still use wind to get to KIRIN during the next turn as well. So we're going to set that one there. Our hand limit is still at 4. Very, very nice. So now the best thing about this is you've got 2 different options. Option number 1 is you go into Beyond the Pendulum and you search out your Unicorn KIRIN that way by paying 1200 life points, and it doesn't lock you into Majespecters. That is the big difference. So it doesn't lock you into Majespecters. You've got your 8 tier 1 and you can do all of the plays you want to after that point. If you don't want to be paying 1200 life points because you're close to time, because you've got 2 Majespecters on the board here, you very easily go into your new, and this will give you a more defensive board, but it will be more open to getting hit by Nibiru. At least if you go down the Beyond the Pendulum route, you will have the ability to go into a Appaloosa should you need to. Just because I want to show you the most Majespecter orientated route possible, we'll go with the Nui. Nui is then going to give you the ability to put 2 monsters into your Pendulum Zone, or technically 2 monsters into your extra deck, and then add 2 back. So when you're making your Nui, you're going to want to use your Yamarashi and your Banbuku, and this is how you're going to regain as much resource as possible. The 2 Majespecters that you're going to want to put into your extra deck is definitely going to want to be Majespecter KIRIN, because that's the whole point of this combo. And then you can either put the Majesty Pegasus, the Draco Slayer, or of course you could go for something like your Ogama, which I would personally prefer to go with Ogama over the Kibi, just because Ogama lets you set a spell or trap, whereas your Kibi will specifically allow you to add one. So if you're under draw, you'll still have a bit more play to work around with, and the Ogama is currently stuck in hand. So Ogama would then go into the extra deck. Now obviously if you've opened up the KIRIN, if you've opened up your Kibi or anything like that, then you can choose 2 different ones. You'll then add 2 back from the extra deck. Now I like to add the Yamarashi because then I've got the quick effect to summon it during my opponent's turn, and the Majespecter Banbuku. If I want to Pendulum summon down, I can do, not that I need to. So you've got these all back to the hand. You've got your scales of 1 to an 8, very good success. And then what you do is you're going to pendulum summon 2 out of the extra deck at the very least, being KIRIN and Ogama. Ogama will then let you set a trap, whether it be Tornado or Tempest, or if you think Cyclone is going to be more effective for you, by all means go for that. So now what it currently stands is you've got winds to help you tribute either of these off if you need to. If you're able to get another level 4 from the board, which of course can be your Yamarashi, you've got the ability to overlay both of these, which is ideally what you want to be doing, and this is going to allow you to get into your Rui. So as this currently stands, your end board is going to be a hand of 5 cards, one of them being a Bambuku, so you can start your entire turn off again. You've then of course got Tempest, which is a technical solemn strike, alongside a Majespecter Winds as well, which will allow you to tribute either your Rui, your Nui, your Rui, or of course KIRIN. Not that you want to be tributing off your KIRIN, but keep that in mind. You've then of course got the ability that when you do activate Winds, as long as you are tributing something like the Nui, which is the most expected thing to do, or the best thing to do, you can now trigger off your Rui. Rui's effect will now allow you to detach, putting a Majespecter in the graveyard, very nice. This will then allow you to summon out any monster from the deck. So if you wanted to go for a Yamarashi, this would then give you the ability of Yamarashi to reset the winds again, very nice. And then you can use KIRIN to add the Yamarashi back to the hand, and you've still got your board like this. So now what you do is you've got 6 cards in your hand, not including the one you're going to draw for turn. You've got the ability of Bambuku to search out any card you want to. Yamarashi can then, of course, keep resetting the winds, very nice. And of course, you've got your Warrior. Now the Warrior is just extended pieces over here. If you're going to go into Beyond the Pendulum in this combo, then you would use one of your Majespecters, which will be the Bambuku, plus your Stardust Charge Warrior. Go into Beyond the Pendulum. Beyond the Pendulum would pay 1200 life points to search out your KIRIN, and you'd do the exact same play. The only difference is you leave the Yamarashi on the board, so that when you pendulum from the extra deck, you can actually summon out your Yata, and that's how you get your rank 4 without needing the extra card to come from your hand, which is really kind of cool. So on top of that, you also get the ability, should you normal summon Bambuku and just directly search out KIRIN, you can also search out your Draco Slayer. This can then give you direct access to your Necro Valley if you want it, or of course your Secret Village. Heck, if you want to be extra spicy, it can also get you into your chicken game. So that's pretty much it for the profile and of course the combo. Like I said, it's just got loads of different options. The idea is that your Wakashi is your 1-card combo to set up your scales of everything you need. Now of course there are other cards in the form of stuff like the monkey board, but the monkey board is only a copy of 1, whereas Wakashi is technically a copy of 5 or 6 if you include the bike as well. And the idea is, like I've said before, yes, there are ways in this deck to be able to get KIRIN back from the, get it out from the deck, get it out from the hand, get it out from the grave, but as soon as it hits the extra deck, it's a lot harder to get it out from the extra deck, which is why the scales of 8 to 1 is so incredibly important. Even if they get rid of your 1, you have an entire deck left of all level 2s, which will still fulfill the requirements. If they get rid of your level 8, that's where it gets a little bit more tricky, but you still have access to just hard open a Wakashi or search a Wakashi, which completes that scales for you as well. So you're still in a very good position, and insanely fun to have KIRIN back in the deck. It's just going to make it even better, and I can't wait to be putting this together and playing it physically when we get the new list in effect here in Europe, which isn't until the 22nd of April. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you do have any questions, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. There are a couple of flex spots in the extra deck, but that is where it comes down to personal preference and adaptation. For now, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.